Greetings, girl, and welcome to my world of phrasing right up to bat. It's the daisy age, and you're about to walk top stage, so wipe your lottos on the mat. Hip hop love, this is, and don't mind.
Who can forget when Congressman Byron Donaldson talked about the fact that black families were stronger during Jim Crow? But he also said something else. Forget about that part right now. Let's talk about something else he said. He said African Americans were conservative until Lyndon Johnson, and then something else happened. I said, you know what? This is a repeat of a story that so many of us have heard. And that story has different layers, but basically it is that African Americans were Republican because Republicans freed the slaves with Lincoln, and they just stayed that way, or maybe they didn't participate in politics at all until 1964, when we had the Civil Rights Act of 64 and then the Voting Rights Act of 65. And then the story goes on a little deeper and says that Democrats, of course, they didn't want African Americans to have any rights. And then all of a sudden in 1964, Lyndon Johnson did something. We don't really know what he did. And for some odd reason, African Americans just started voting Democrat. But the key to this story kind of is that Republicans were always in African Americans' corner and Democrats were not. And therefore, why are we still in the Democratic Party today? But let's kind of look at that story. Is it really true? Let's kind of examine that thing. And as we go back in time and look at it, and we're going to see that it's really not true at all, let's kind of clear up a couple of terms. When we talk about states and North and South, of course, the South means the South. When we start talking about the North, we mean the northeastern states, Midwestern states, and even Western states to some extent. But for brevity purposes, we just say North. Also, when we start talking about policies or reaching out to African Americans, if I say a certain party reached out to African Americans or had policies for African Americans, we realize that's relative to the times, of course. We know it's not like today, it's relative to the times. So let's go back, way back, and I mean way back. We're going to go back all the way to the election of 1876. And we have Samuel Tilden versus Rutherford B. Hayes. Tilden's a Democrat, Hayes is a Republican. Now, always remember when we're talking about these things, the kind of benchmark of the story is Republicans are always going to stand up for African Americans, no doubt about it. And we know the Democrats, especially Southern Democrats, had their issues. But remember, the story is Republicans stood up, and that's why we ought to be Republican. So what's going on in 1876? We have this election. Reconstruction is working. It's working because you have federal troops, United States of America troops, down in the South to make sure African Americans are actually protected. But unfortunately, the South is getting tired of having those troops down there. And of course, the North Republicans are also getting tired of putting troops down there. So you have this election in 1876, and Tilden actually comes one vote short from winning the Electoral College. So the Democrat comes one vote short from winning the Electoral College. And it's three states that are key: Florida, South Carolina, and Louisiana. And just so happens that all of those three states also have troops in those states to make sure African Americans are protected. So basically, Democrats of the South, more like the South, goes to Rutherford B. Hayes and says, you know what, we got a deal for you. You can become president. We will give you the Electoral College votes in the contested states, Florida, South Carolina, Louisiana, southern states. We'll give you those Electoral College votes if you guys would take those troops out of those particular states. Now, remember, the story is Republicans always stand up for African Americans, right? So obviously, what Hayes said was, well, what are you going to do about your African American citizens? Are you going to treat them well? And the South, not being dummies, they say, absolutely, we're going to treat them well. Trust us. Please trust us. And he says, okay, you promise? They say, yeah, we promise. And he gets the presidency, and guess what happens? The troops are removed from the South. And from there, the American nightmare as far as Southern politics is concerned for African Americans takes off, of course. And we call that the Compromise of 1877. But one of the things we got to realize, this compromise, where this is one of the first times that we see the Republican Party, selling to African Americans, that compromise actually is not that surprising because it comes with a backdrop. It comes with a backdrop of a backlash against African Americans within the Republican Party. And that backlash was termed by a guy named Norris Wright Cooney, who termed it the Lily White Movement. He was an African American gentleman. He actually ran the Republican Party in the state of Texas. And he said, you know, this backlash that's going against African Americans is basically what he called a Lily White movement. And of course, he was against that, but it was nothing he really could do to really fight it off. And that backlash in the Republican Party mirrored similar backlash, of course, in the United States, because we also see in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, where Chief Justice Billings wrote the opinion that says separate was equal. And so let's kind of look at it some more when we talk about this. So that's one of the first times that African Americans said, wait, I thought Republicans, you were with us. Free the slaves, I thought you were with us. But now we have what we call the Lily White Movement. We have the Compromise 1877, and that brings us to Republican President Theodore Roosevelt. He's elected 1906. he's faced with what's called the Brownsville Affair. Brownsville Affair is this. In Texas, you have African-American troops. Of course, you have segregation. You have African-American troops in Texas who are accused of sexual assault and also murder. And they're accused of this and said your whole regiment basically participated in this. Their white officers said to everyone who would listen, these guys were in their barracks. They have nothing to do with what's going on in there. So remember now, the story is Republicans stand up for African Americans. They're always going to be there for us, right? They're always there, and we don't have any idea why African Americans voted Democrat. But yet, that would mean that Roosevelt would say, hey, I believe those African American soldiers. Those are American soldiers. Well, not really. What he did was he decided to dishonorably discharge all of them out of the military. So can you imagine what a dishonorable discharge does to anybody today, what it certainly would do to an African American in 1906? And that's exactly what took place. It would not be until 1972 that the lone survivor, a guy named Dorsey Williams, would finally get his back pay, led by Senator Hubert Humphrey, oh my God, a Democrat, and Augustus Hawkins, a congressman, also a Democrat, who stood up for him and made sure he got pardoned and also to make sure he got his back pay. But let's go back to 1906, see what African Americans are seeing now. So what they've seen in the Republican Party is the Lily White movement. Now they've seen the president basically sell them out, sell soldiers out, and they're now questioning and saying, why are we doing this? What's going on here? And then that brings us to our next president. So we have a next president that gets elected, and that president is William Taft. He's also a Republican, faced again with a situation dealing with African American soldiers. And this time the soldiers are protesting segregated railway cars. Remember, the story is Republicans always stood up for African Americans, always there. They're protesting segregated railway cars, so you know for a fact that he was going to be on their team. He was actually probably protesting with them, right? Not so fast. He actually ordered basically the Secretary of the Army to remove the troops out of Texas, to get rid of them. Get rid of those rabble rousers. Didn't discharge them, but said, hey, just remove them out. And so that's the kind of backdrop that's existing now. So now you have the Lily White movement, you have the backlash against African Americans, you have two presidents now who have basically failed African American soldiers and in general African Americans. That brings us to 1928, so you have to understand that backdrop that exists there. 1928, Herbert Hoover, Republican, is elected president. He actually wins a few southern states. Let's look here. North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, and Virginia. He wins those southern states. Now, he doesn't win them because he really campaigned hard, and he wins them because they're anti-Catholic and the person he's running against was a Catholic. But the bottom line, he wins them. So you would think, remember the story. The story is Republicans always there. You would think he would go down to those southern states and say, hey, you voted for me. I'm a Republican, Party of Lincoln. You guys got to start treating your African-American citizens better, the United States citizens better. Think that he did that? No. What he did was he decided that he was going to try to create some kind of grand bargain. And he went back to the term of Lily Whiteism because he was going to try to figure out a way to actually get some kind of bargain between whites who are racist and actually the Republican Party. Now, he realized that that was going to be bad news for African Americans in the short term, but he's told them, long term, you'll be okay. But right now, let's try to flip the South and make it more Republican. They voted for me, so you guys just stand your ground there. You're going to get picked on a lot more. You're going to get hung. You're going to have all this racist treatment. But let me do this Lily White thing, and let's continue to move forward. And that's caused the Chicago Defender, for instance, one of the leading African-American newspapers. One of the things they said was, because of what he was doing, they said Republicans are now going to lose African-American votes. The Defender also said, after 50 years of support, maybe we should move on. W.D. Du Bois said about what Hoover was doing was, he's either naive at best or a closet racist at worst. And so that was because he was trying to do this bargain with these Southern folks. And so African Americans looked at that and said, wait a minute, this isn't good. This isn't cool. But he goes further than that. Forget the bargain. He actually now doubles down. Remember now, he got votes in the South. One of the states he got was North Carolina. So now he has to pay North Carolina back. And what does he do? He appoints a guy named John Parker to be on the Supreme Court. Well, who is John Parker? John Parker was a racist from North Carolina, ran for governor of North Carolina, and actually said while he was running for governor, hey, African Americans shouldn't even participate in politics. They have no place in politics, don't even participate in it. So when he gets nominated, the NAACP basically writes him a letter and says, hey, do you still hold these kind of beliefs? Because it's one thing for you to be running for governor of North Carolina, but now you're about to be on the Supreme Court. You actually still hold these beliefs. It said Harry Pace of the National Negro Association, when he heard about this appointment, said that Lily Whiteism was unjustified and un-American. A guy named Robert Vann, who also was a very prominent newspaper editor, he said, African Americans from this point forward, they need to go home, turn the picture of Lincoln around. That debt has been paid. And what they're saying is, it's time to move on from the Republican Party. But why? But where would they go? See, this is the story this is part of the things that we never kind of hear about. Thank you for watching. This particular video is one part of a 4-part series. If you would like to learn more about this subject, please watch the remaining 3 parts, or you can watch in its entirety by clicking the link below. I'm Georgia State Senator Harold Jones, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you again for watching.